Hello there. This is a rare one. This is me by myself this time. Linda's working, and we thought about it a bit and thought, why don't we start this series? Because it's going to be a series of videos. Just me starting it off, because this is, of course, an Ice and Fire related video, and it's also, strangely enough, a Game of Thrones related video. Because this one and the videos that we're going to follow it are all about the Successor show or shows, which I have no problem being interested in. I have no problem, I think, watching something based on the world and the stories in it. In part, I admit, because as we know, David and Dan are kind of stepping back. They'll be executive producers because they're the ones who brought the whole property to HBO, so they're always going to be profiting from it. And more power to them. But it sounds like they're not going to be involved in the day-to-day show running. I mean, they've got Confederate, which got them a lot more attention, I think, than they had hoped for. But anyways, so yeah, we're interested in it, what the possibilities are, and this video is going to discuss sort of the parameters of what we know about it so far, what these 4 or possibly 5 scripts aren't about, right? Because George has laid out some things it's not about. Casey Blois, the sort of creative director of programming at HBO, has laid out some details about what it's not about as well. And then in the follow-up videos, we're going to look at what it can be about, things that we've thought about, and maybe a final video kind of touching our top 5 ideas. Yeah, so let me start with kind of laying out the parameters of what we know that it isn't. When we first heard about this idea of some sort of sequel, successor, it was when Richard Pepler was still running things. And he, at least, was more interested in a sequel. He wanted to see the characters continue. That sounds like a terrible idea, and it looks like HBO and David and Dan, various people, felt like it was a terrible idea. And so instead, we see that they are looking at drawing from this world that has attracted people and fans so very much. I mean, is it really just the specific characters that are all that people care about? Or is it partly the, dragons and magic and monsters and blood and sex and all the spectacular aspects that have made this a phenomenon? So we know it's not a sequel. We know recently Casey Blois said no existing or current characters. Now, there's still a little bit of a question mark around that. Some people say, well, could you have a character who isn't existing currently in the show, but who existed at some point, aka Tywin Lannister? Could you do a story about Tywin under the Mad King? And then you'd have like Barris and Selmy, and you'd have a few other characters who are around them, but that one doesn't really work so well, I think, because you have Varys, and since Varys isn't supposed to be around, so I don't think that works. But you could go further back. You could go to, for example, could you go as far back as a young Tywin Lannister? Actually, I think it's one of the ideas we're going to toss out there. From the World of Ice and Fire, the Westerlands right up, we know a lot of interesting things happen in that region. It's a smaller scale story, but at the same time, it touches on his becoming acquainted with Aerys, the Mad King, and leading to his rise. It seems possible. Am I going to get a co-star? No. Okay, Reed is lying down over there. The other thing we know, obviously, is that there's 4 writers currently working. George has said there'll be a 5th who kind of loves Westeros about as much as Linda and I do. And we have some idea of who that probably is, but, it's not really what we're going to discuss in the future videos. George has said that, he pitched 2 ideas to HBO in August. And one of them they didn't like, and one of them is among those being developed, it sounds like. So that's interesting as well. Like, which is the one, if we could look at all the possible projects, what is George personally kind of most involved in because he pitched it? I mean, and I think the other thing to bear in mind, I think, when we're thinking about it, is the other thing that George kind of has said is, it's not going to be Duncan Egg, but HBO isn't currently interested at. It's not going to be Robert's Rebellion. I know that's and I a little bit I disagree with George. I've said this before. George says, well, you know, you'll know everything about it by the end of the series and the books, and that matters. And why would you want to see it again? To me, that, you know, George is a fan of historical fiction. I'm pretty sure most of the historical fiction he's read, he knows the end outcome of the major events, but he reads them anyways because it's interesting. I think Robert's Rebellion could be endlessly interesting as a story, but on the other hand, maybe George is right that it'd be better to try and do something different to diversify the franchise, I guess. And you know, he doesn't rule out the possibility that some years down the road, maybe if it remains a big hit, there's a lot of interest in things, maybe in 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, maybe, you know, whenever, HBO will say, hey, let's do a Robert's Rebellion. Why not? We've had all these advancements in CG. We've got all this stuff that we've built up over the years from these other shows. Why not go back and revisit this period of time that people are really interested in? But for the current successors, developing scripts and so on, none of them are bad. If it's not going to be Duncan A, it's not going to be Robert's Rebellion, it's not going to be any of the characters we have, what about... Are they thinking of stories that, you know, the obvious spot when you first heard about it was, of course, it's going to be something set in Westeros. And then one thing we do know, or at least we seem to know, is that George has brought up the possibility that at least one of the pitched projects is actually not set primarily in Westeros. It may not be set in Westeros at all, to be honest. He keeps mentioning the lands beyond, you know, Westeros and the lands beyond, and his big post about it, that when he had been meeting with various writers and discussing various things. So what we're going to do, starting with the next video, is we're going to first look at a bunch of possibilities of where are there stories in the world of Ice and Fire, in the books and as well, about things that happened outside of Westeros that you could see a writer going through Wikipedia, going through the books. We don't know really how much research any of these writers have done. But what could we have seen of any of them that would catch the interest of a writer trying to convince HBO that this is a show to make? So the first video is going to be about the stories outside of Westeros. Second video is going to be stories inside of Westeros with a big focus on the Targaryens and why the Targaryens, well, as we noted in our last video, and I think very few people actually paid attention to it. When George first posted his mysterious image of Valyria, and that sort of took a little turn on that quote from Revelations about Babylon, calling about Valyria and its doom, and when he posted that one was clearly, he tagged it Ice and Fire. It was clearly Ice and Fire related. But now, he's followed up explaining, I mean, he doesn't explicitly say that it is about Fire and Blood, but we feel pretty confident that his tweet, his post, was about Fire and Blood. And that he's been working a little bit on pre-Targaryen stuff. Or pre-Aegon's Conquest stuff, rather. Or, you know, the little bit fleshing out some of the history of the Targaryens, coming to Dragonstone, and so on, as part of Fire and Blood. But that post about Fire and Blood, he tags very clearly Game of Thrones HBO. So for us, this seems a clear indicator that George, at least one of the projects pitched, is set within the Targaryen time frame. The frame of the Targaryen dynasty. So second video will be a lot about that. And then a third video, I'm not sure. If we do it, it'll be, my idea at least, is running through our 5 favorite ideas. Trying to think of, and we know we're going to discuss pros and cons, and a lot of the cons are going to be like, can we do this in a budget that HBO will accept? Well, HBO will not want to start off a new show at the base level budget of Season 7, Season 8 Game of Thrones. That has a very high budget. They're going to want to be able to start smaller to see if it takes, and then it'll ramp up naturally over time. But we have some ideas about, I mean, I have 1 or 2 things that are really clearly in my head, like they would work really well. But we'll discuss that. I mean, maybe you'll be able to tell after these next two videos, but maybe in the final video, if we do that, it'll be, you know, not just subtext, it'll be clear. So that's what we're gonna do. The next video, it will be Linda and I, and hopefully tomorrow. Tomorrow's a busy day here. A lot of family visiting this old farmhouse where we're at, and there's a big event down at down. I guess you would say Sund. It's a sound where a lot of these traditional wooden boats are going to be kind of forming a fleet and sailing up, and there'll be parties and things. So, you know, it's a busy day. But hopefully tomorrow, if not the day after. And we're going to try and keep a schedule, you know, a video every couple of days if we can. It's tough when we're up here. It is our vacation, but it'd be nice to at least have one out on Sunday, because then Monday we've got the show and Linda's got to do a video for that. Anyways, I'm rambling. I haven't done this in a long time, but it's nice to see. Thank you so much for everyone who kind of was glad to see me back again after so long. It's just been hectic, busy times. We've been doing so much with our sleepy dog. Bonus material will this time be a sleeping dog. He's not snoring at the moment, but I'll show you what he looks like when he's sleepy, because he's very cute. And until then, next video. Hey, Breezy. Yeah, disturbed you.